Hello and welcome to the August 19th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Market Review. I am Tom Luongo. It's Sunday, so we've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about in terms of market closes and all of that. There's a lot going on in the world of geopolitics and domestic politics, and I'm going to focus on that in the initial commentary, and then we're going to talk about gold, the euro, and Bitcoin, because those are the three most important markets right now for our portfolio. So let's go forward. All right, so Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin sat down for a summit yesterday, and while Putin was on a charm tour across Europe, because he's also visited the wedding of the Austrian finance minister or foreign minister, one or the other. Major official in the Austrian government was caught speaking German and dancing and being very un-Putin-like. And then he sat down for a meeting with Angela Merkel. And I brought this picture up here on purpose because this is what I saw from multiple media outlets, not just from RT or the Russian media outlets, but also some of the European ones as well. And that's a distinct difference in presentation. This is a humanized version of Putin. Note the warm color timing on this and all of it. This is the kind of thing where they're trying to, where there's now a shift in the perception of who Vladimir Putin is and why he is. Because, I mean, normally Putin's photographed pretty cold color timing. So is Merkel. They're both being humanized here with this picture. And this picture and variations on it are all over the news right now. And I think that's really important because that's telling me that there's a real shift happening here. That German media, which is even more virulently anti-Russian than ours, is beginning to shift. As the reality sets in that if Germany is going to have a future, that they're going to have to continue siding with the Russians at the expense of the Trump administration. Again, this piles onto or adds to my thesis that part of what part of what Trump is doing in pressuring Iran is to actually force Germany to act independently and force the old relationships between the United States, the EU, and everybody else to a crisis point and force them into change and substantive change. They spoke about Nord Stream 2, which nobody should be surprised about. But more importantly, there's also a report I saw on RT that Germany is considering having a summit with Russia, China, and Turkey over Syria. And if Germany is willing to or interested in formally becoming a part of the talks to determine or help determine the political reality after the Syrian civil war ends, that's a major change because the United States is nowhere involved in any of this. We're still trying to pressure people into doing things that they don't want to do. We're now turning the Kurds against the Turks, and it's just all crazy, right? Trump came out and ended $230 million worth of reconstruction aid to Syria. That's purely being driven by the Israeli lobby behind the scenes. And he wants the Saudis to do it. Okay. The Saudis should do it. They're the ones who push for this, but we push for it as well. And Trump needs to know that. All right, so I bring up Iran now because Iran is in the crosshairs here, and there's a great article on RT this morning from Finney and Cunningham, a commentator I don't normally like because he's he's a lot too leftist for my taste, but Iran is not going to sit down, and the premise of the article is that Trump's anti-Iran sanctions policy is going to have a really serious deleterious effect on our situation in Afghanistan. And there's a number of incidents out of Afghanistan with attacks by the Taliban on various important or supposedly or should have been more secure U.S. asset or U.S. bases in Afghanistan. And the point being is that the more you destabilize Iran, the more you destabilize Afghanistan as well, because there's a tremendous amount of trade and migrant workers that go across the Afghan Iranian border. I mean, they share a significant border, and their economies, such as they are significantly intertwined. And so civil unrest or regime change in Iran is only going to make it even harder for and more untenable for the United States to maintain their presence in Afghanistan. And part of me, if Trump is crazy like a fox, this is one of the things that is going to come out of this. Is one of the ways he's going to be able to justify leaving Afghanistan and having already opened up peace talks with the Taliban. With outrageous and untenable demands placed on the Taliban. So the talks are not really going anywhere. But these are this is the opening gambit. This is the opening moment of this realignment. These things are all beginning to take place here. So Iran is continuing to work the diplomatic channels in order to maintain as many relationships as possible as we move into the sanctions, the reapplication of sanctions in November. And it's very obvious that the Germans want to continue to get relatively cheap energy from Iran. They're going to get their energy from the Russians. Trump is angry about this because that undermines his plans for energy dominance and through the radical expansion of U.S. domestic oil production in order to defend the petrodollar. And right now, the Saudis are our alliance of convenience in order to maintain petrodollar demand. But in doing so, and this is the short-sightedness of this policy, and this is not a policy I agree with, because if Trump wanted to continue the dollar to be a strong world trade currency, then it is then imposition of sanctions on anybody and everybody that doesn't do exactly what he tells them to do is exactly the way he's going to lose people's respect for the dollar over the course of time, as the more he weaponizes it. And the truth of the matter is they should stop weaponizing the dollar at this point in time. But he's not doing it. And I don't know who's setting this policy. I don't care if it's Trump. I don't care if it's the Obama holdovers and the Soros crowd, the Davos crowd behind the scenes using the Office of Foreign Asset Control to undermine him. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Policy is policy. And as Putin always says, presidents change, but policy doesn't. And that's just why these things are happening. It's why the Caspian Sea deal came together quickly last week. It's why Merkel and Putin are sitting down to talk. It's why Erdogan went to go talk to Merkel earlier in the week. No one expected much to come out of this meeting between Putin and Merkel of a substantive nature, ending of sanctions or anything else. It's the understanding that Putin here is actually trying to help shore up Merkel to a certain extent in order to get her to shift policy away from the United States. Because that's what, everybody outside of the United States wants. Okay. So that's what's going on there. And now let's move on to the domestic policy front, because this is very important. So Rasmussen puts out a poll on Friday morning saying that Trump's support amongst black people in America is now 36%. Now, if you remember, those numbers were less than 20% in April or May of this year. And then Kanye West and Candace Owens blew up, and now we're at 36%. And, their unemployment is at multi-generational lows, and black unemployment is as low as it's ever been, and all of these things. So this is no surprise. And this is why John Brennan's blowing a fuse. This is why he has to play this quote-unquote traitor card to the hilt, because they're still maneuvering in Washington as if nothing has changed, even though they're desperate, even though all of these moves to deplatform Alex Jones and to delegitimize Trump and all of this stuff is pure moments of desperation. These are moves of absolute and pure desperation. Even Trump's crazy sanctions and tariff policy are a reflection of the desperation of maintaining the imperial control of the United States. These are all. These are what they feel are necessary moves. And I've said many times, and I'll continue to say it, these people are very smart, but they're not very clever. They do the same things over and over again. Because when you have power makes you stupid. It makes you lazy. You just use power like a cudgel. And, everything's a hammer. You have a hammer and everything looks like a nail. And any disobedience looks like a nail that needs to be hammered down. And it's just the way things are. And guys like John Brennan understand this. And, they tried to turn this revoking his security clearance into a damned if Trump does, damned if Trump doesn't moment. Like, if he doesn't revoke Brennan's security clearance, and Brennan will continue to use his security clearance to leak information damaging to Trump in the press. And if he does, then they'll turn around and say he's trying to silence dissent. It's a typical CIA style psyop where you give a person a bad choice. The problem is that nobody buys this, that latter choice is, that latter bad choice is reality. No one buys that Trump is trying to silence dissent, other than the people who have Trump derangement syndrome, and that's about 15% of the population. And the thing about it is that used to be higher than that. It's not. That has no chance of crossing the 16% chasm. Okay, we're not going to get to it. They think they're going to be able to manufacture outrage to the point where they're going to get 35% of the country or 40% of the country to believe that Trump is trying to stifle opposition to his government, is trying to stifle his critics. It's bullshit. Pardon my French, but this is nonsense, right? It's not that way, and black people supporting Trump at record numbers. Anything above 20%, and the Democrats can't win a national election for a Republican candidate. It's just that simple. So now we're at 36%. Okay, they're not going to win Senate seats. They're not going to win the congressional seats that they think they're going to win without massive voter fraud. Because black turnout for Democrats this fall will be abysmal. And if anything, we'll see a 5 or 7, we'll see a 10% shift in black and Hispanic turnout in Trump's favor, in Trump candidates' favor. Trump-approved candidates' favor, forget it. The whole thing's over. And it's not going to be a blue wave. It's going to be a red tide. And it's going to be ugly. And that's why the Democrats are going to lose. And I said this back in the June issue of the Gold, Goats, and Guns investment newsletter. I said that the Democrats are done. And we're just watching it play out now. And I'm not surprised that it's moving this quickly. Because once you get above a certain level, once it becomes socially acceptable to not be anti-Trump as a black person, all of a sudden everybody starts to agree with it. When it's obvious that he's not, when it's obvious that he's not a rampant racist, and your job prospects are improving and your life prospects are improving. And, a lot of rural blacks, especially here in North Florida, I can tell you that I don't know of a black person here in rural North Florida that voted for Hillary Clinton. All of my neighbors, because I live in a rural neighborhood dominated by a black family, they're just wonderful people. I adore them. They happen to be black. And my other friends that are former coworkers of like my wife and like public works, county public works and stuff like that. All these, these blue collar people, they're all voted for Trump. It's like, are you kidding me? And if you don't see that that's going to continue and that's gonna spill over into 2018, you're out of your mind. So this is where we are. So the real realignments are happening, both geopolitically and domestically, and those things are interesting. Now the question is, can Trump clean up his opposition to the point where he can make clear and decisive moves that will actually then clean up Washington for real? And with Trump, like everything else, because he's a Loki figure, it'll be 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. And sometimes it'll be 3 steps backwards and then, we'll vault forward or whatever. It's going to be that way. And it's just going to be very kind of volatile. And this is a volatile period of time. And he's a volatile person. So there we go. All right, let's talk about gold. Let's talk about the markets. All right. So gold broke support at 1208 this week. You can see it clearly here on the chart. This is what I've been talking about. This is the support I was talking about at 1208. This is not particularly strong support. This is why I'm not surprised that it finally broke down. But this 6-week downtrend here, and really this is a 13-week downtrend in gold, or even 18-week downtrend now in gold. This is insane. So we're getting very close to the bottom of this. This cycle will shift at some level and in a different direction. And this is the washout that I was very worried about. And I talked about earlier in the year, and why we didn't add to our gold assets earlier in the year, and why we're only now starting to add to our gold exposure now, right? And we added a gold stock company in this last month's issue, in the August issue. I don't know that I'll add another one in the September issue. I think I'm looking at some other stuff for the September issue. May not even add a stock this September, but I probably will. Maybe I'll add a silver stock. We'll see. Because I do like silver. It's just I'm waiting for the bottom before I even can think about investing in silver. I saw a thing earlier in the week that the gold to silver ratio is now at 40-year highs or something like that. It's where silver's trading so cheaply relative to gold that it's that it's insane, and that's usually a good contrarian indicator. We have to see a bottom. We have to see kind of a peak in the silver to gold ratio, the gold to silver ratio, before we can clear out the bottom of this, because a lot of people like to speculate on silver as a way to hedge against gold being too expensive. And we also like to, and the powers that be like to use silver weakness to bomb the gold market as well, because they're tied to each other and yada, yada, yada. So there's all this stuff going on. But at some point, I also saw that at some point, the commercials are beginning to go net long gold, meaning the large banks are now going net long, and they're just feeding into the managed money, the hedge fund speculators, the spec long. The spec shorts are at record levels. So we're getting very close to max pain in gold, and this is a good thing. So, hold on to your hats, take some Tums, don't worry, have faith, grab a towel, do whatever you have to do. In the immortal words of Dennis Farina, sit down, have a cream soda, eat a sandwich, do some freaking thing. Relax, gold is going to be fine. We may hit the 2016 low of 1127 if there's any kind of liquidity spasm, because I'm going to show you the next chart. It's really important here to understand what's actually happening. So this is the euro. We've talked about the euro collapse. We're net short in our portfolio on the euro, and I put that position on a few months ago, and that's now paying us very well. But what's important here to understand is that the collapse in the euro is not just dollar-based. It's broad-based. And this is the Swiss national franc. This is the Swiss franc versus the euro, and the euro is losing against the Swiss franc, which is a major This is a major safe haven flow indicator. Okay, and the Swiss National Bank is very, very quick to pull the trigger to support the euro. They do not want the euro collapsing quickly against their currency, so they will always come in and intervene. And I think this Thursday and Friday's action, which they came in and intervened at the $1.13 level and pushed the weekly close back up above $1.14. I think that's Swiss National Bank intervention. I'll be shocked if it isn't. And the part of the reason for that is that if we look at the yen, we didn't really see much of a rally in the euro versus the yen. This was purely done to manufacture a relief rally into the end of the week. There was also options expiration this week as well in the U.S. equity markets, so that probably had a lot to do with it as well. So look for. I don't take a lot of stock in this 2-bar reversal here. This is a 2-bar reversal, and it's above the significantly above this level. We may get a small bounce here into the euro back around $1.50, even $1.15, but that's only then going to run into what was strong support is now strong resistance. And so, if you're of the day-to-day trading bent, I would be looking at shorting the euro again back into the $1.15 range for a drop down towards $1.10, if not lower. And you can watch the Japanese euro yen. The euro yen cross is also important here because this is an important carry trade indicator. The carry trades are unwinding, and that's what's happening here. We're seeing an unwinding of yen European carry trades. Okay, so this is a broad-based collapse of the euro, and it's all being brought on by emerging market stress and Chinese internal stress. Thanks to a strengthening dollar. So it's all just kind of normal. So again, the euro is collapsing, and we're coming into Italian budget talks and a variety of other things over the course of the next couple of months. Should be really interesting coming into the next few weeks. We didn't see a breakout in the Dow this week, so I expect U.S. equities to be choppy for the next few weeks as well. So, but that makes sense. Going into Labor Day, I'm not surprised that we're going to see the Dow just be non-committal until traders come back to their desks after summer vacation. That's just kind of normal. Okay. All right, Bitcoin. Let's talk about Bitcoin. I think I dialed in this week to the weekly chart, and then I ran the statistics for the week as well. It's important to note, actually at a weekly level, Bitcoin is more volatile than at a monthly level. It's really quite interesting. But I think we may be getting a double bottom here. I'm really encouraged that this low didn't violate that low, but Bitcoin is still very weak. Okay, and what I'm hoping for here is that after this nasty 4 weeks of extreme volatility, where we saw a big breakout that was technically significant and then a collapse, that we didn't violate this low. And if we get a break to the upside this week, that would be good. And we're seeing that we have about a 65% probability of that. But we still have a coin flip on the downside as well. Last week was not a volatile week, so that means that the possibility of either a break up or a breakdown are very high. And because there's no trend here, I don't have the trend reversal statistics. So let's just not let's not even consider that at this point. What we should be looking at is, will Bitcoin stabilize here and form a nice stable trading range between 6,000 and 8,000? And you can see this this kind of decaying. What's the word? It's like a ball bouncing. That kind of pattern is showing up. Lower, we've now got a bottom, and then boom, 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 and we really can't. And you'll notice that the shorts can't push it down very far, and so that's telling me that we're in pretty good shape. And if you go back on the chart far enough, you'll see that 6,000 is the 6,000 was a significant support level as we were moving through the this range here. It was significant. It was a significant bout of resistance here, and then we broke out and moved higher. This was all that New York agreement worry back in November, and then we got the big run up, and then we got the collapse. But if Bitcoin stabilizes here at 6,000, then the crypto markets will begin to stabilize, and a lot of altcoins will start to shore up as well. And then once Bitcoin breaks out, we'll start to get the rotation trades like we did last year. Whereas Bitcoin gets expensive, people will rotate out into other things that are cheap. And it'll be the same way with gold and silver. That when gold gets expensive, then people rotate into silver, and then vice versa. And right now, since the gold to silver ratio is hitting a peak, that means there's probably going to be some strong support for silver. So I guess maybe I'm talking myself into the position of going out and finding a silver stock to recommend for y'all for the September issue. All right. Well, that sounds good. All right, you guys, this is what I've got for the day. So you guys have a great afternoon. We'll talk soon. I'll be back on Wednesday. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, and I'll try and get to them in the next edition of this, or I'll just leave a direct comment, a direct reply to all of you. I appreciate your support as always. We've added a lot of new people over the last month. The new marketing things are working really well. So if you're listening to me for the first time and you appreciate what I have to say, you can follow my work over on support my work over on Patreon. Would be appreciated, as well as you can follow my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com. You guys have a great afternoon. Take care and keep your stick on the ice.